For those of you that have not been to some of the earlier programs that I have done, I would like to go ahead and run down some of the very earliest aspects of Cheyenne Frontier Days, just kind of as a refresher for everybody about how this whole Cheyenne Frontier Days gig got started. It's fantastic. Now, one of the other things that we also mention is that we are the first rodeo. I want to go ahead and say that's not true. All right, it's very easily not true. As a matter of fact, the Mexican vaqueros and the ranches, the haciendas down in Mexico, had these things called charreras all the way since the 1500s, where cowboys would get together and challenge each other to ropings, breaking horses, and also riding bulls. From about the 1500s all the way up until modern day, they still do the same thing. All of our cowboys learned how to do all of these sports from them, as that information from the cowboys came up from the vaqueros into Texas, into Kansas, into Oregon, eventually came to Wyoming, and well, once everybody really enjoyed the sport, they kept doing it. The first official rodeo, which is Spanish for roundup, actually happened in Prescott, Arizona, which I believe was in 1876, if I'm not mistaken. So they've got Cheyenne Frontier Days beat by a decade or more. We even have Lander, Wyoming, which had the first rodeo in Wyoming in 1886, which is 10 years before Cheyenne Frontier Days. Now, what makes Cheyenne Frontier Days special is the fact that we decided to make it more than just the rodeo sport of the cowboys. We decided to make it a Western celebration, a Western event, so we would have an acknowledgement and a tip of the hat to the American Indian, to the soldiers, to the miners, to the railroaders, to the pioneers that came through, and of course we'd have cowboy sports and events and rodeo to celebrate Cheyenne's own rodeo history. And the way that got started is kind of an interesting, convoluted way. The first man that actually came up with the concept for Cheyenne Frontier Days didn't even know he was going to do it, and he was a railroad agent for the Union Pacific Railroad by the name of Frederick Ainger. He was doing this he started this in 1884, which is the year after we went into what is considered probably one of the worst depressions in the 19th century. We had banks collapse all over the place, all across the nation in 1893, and so everybody across the United States was suffering. We were having a lot of people that were just really in the doldrums. Even the Union Pacific was having a hard time getting people just to buy tickets to go places. So Frederick Ainger is a ticket agent for the Union Pacific Railroad, and he comes up with his idea to encourage outlying communities around Denver to have special events, a fair or a festival that would encourage people to buy day tickets from Denver to go to the fair, have a good time, spend their money out there, and then bring souvenirs and good stories back. The main thrust was to get people to buy tickets on the Union Pacific Railroad. So in 1894, he started by taking a group of people on an excursion to Boulder, Colorado, and I think they celebrated mining. And so they had a mining festival, people had a good time, and so it seemed to be relatively popular, so he decided to do it again, but instead of going west to the mountains where he couldn't go much further, he decided to go north. And so the first place he approached is in 1895, was a place called Loveland, Colorado. Asked the city fathers what they grew there. They said corn, and they developed a corn festival. All right, and so the Loveland Corn Festival is still going on today, thanks to Frederick Ainger, and that was very popular. They went back. The next year, they went further north to Greeley, Colorado, and asked the city fathers what they were famous for, and they said potatoes. And so in 1896, they had Greeley Potato Day, which, of course, is still going on, and eventually grew into the Greeley Stampede. All right, so that happened there. People from Cheyenne, including E.A. Slack, who is Esther Hobart Morris's son and a newspaper editor, went with Warren Richardson, who is the head of the industrial club for Cheyenne, future Chamber of Commerce, saw this show and said, we should do something like this here to get people up here. Well, Ainger always wanted to come to Cheyenne to get that trunk line all the way up and down to the main line here in Cheyenne to Denver active. So in 1897, in August, about August 10th, he came to Cheyenne and asked the city fathers here if they would like to have a festival and asked them what we were famous for. And everybody at the moment was thinking, what do we grow, since everything else has been kind of a growing festival? And everybody was thinking, we don't grow anything here in Cheyenne. We can't grow tomatoes, we can't grow strawberries, we can't grow anything. We go ahead and have something grow, then the frost kills it or the hail kills it. Nothing lives here. So they were all just looking at each other blankly like, boy, we wish we had a better idea. The story goes that Frederick Ainger, with his very disappointing meeting with the Chamber of Commerce, went down to the depot to get back on the train. It was delayed. And what a wonderful thing that it was, because while he was sitting there waiting for the train with all the other passengers, he noticed a commotion a little bit further west down the track within walking distance, where a group of 10 cowboys were trying to fight a recalcitrant horse into a boxcar, and it would not go. And so they were using every trick they had. They were using every bit of language they could figure out on how to swear at the horse, and the horse was kicking, jumping, bucking, and having all kinds of a ferocious attack to keep from getting in his car. And he realized how entertained he was by watching this, and he also saw how many other people were watching along the way, but were rooting not only for the cowboys, but for the horse. And hopefully the horse would win in some cases. It dawned on him that Cheyenne had a bigger story than what it grew. And so he went back to the city fathers. They made another meeting, and they came up with the idea of what Cheyenne Frontier Day would be. And that would be a celebration of Cheyenne's entire heritage, which was quite infamous because of everything from its Hell on Wheels days with the railroads to the Indian Wars to the cattle days, when Cheyenne was using the cattle industry to become the richest per capita city in the world of its size during the 1870s and the 1880s. They said, well, why don't we celebrate this? And the rodeo was a perfect thing to reflect the cattlemen's days. And so what you have there is how the city of Cheyenne created Cheyenne Frontier Day. The very first day, that festival from Denver was to be one day. It was held at a place not here. There was nothing up here. In 1897, nothing happened here. It was wide open, grassy plains with gophers and chickens, I guess, maybe. But there was nothing else going on up here. They had it down at something called the Wyoming Territorial Fairgrounds, which today is modern-day Pioneer Park. So where the school is, the baseball diamond, and everything else, that's where the Wyoming Territorial Fairgrounds used to be. And so that's where they held it, a one-day affair. They invited Indians that lived here in Cheyenne. The first Indian to perform at Cheyenne Frontier Days or be here is a guy by the name of Charles Whitehawk, 1897, and he got several Sioux to come join him. Then we also had the military, thanks to Captain Pitcher, who brought the military involved, didn't even ask permission from the War Department to get involved. They just did it. And then we also had cowboys that came from various ranches with the worst bucking horses and animals they could find. The people in Denver were so excited. Those 4,000 people that came up on that first day, which is quite a few for that excursion trip, told everybody that they knew. That word got out so far that the next year there was another guy who heard about this wonderful event that reflected something what he believed was exciting about the American West, and so he pitched to bring his own traveling Wild West show to be a part of the second Cheyenne Frontier Days. And his name was Buffalo Bill Cody. So the Second Frontier Days, September 5th, 1898, was held concurrently with the Buffalo Bill Wild West show, and the number of people that came for the second show went from 4,000 to 20,000. And then Cheyenne Frontier Days made its reputation right then and continued to keep growing all the way through. Now, from 1898 all the way up until 1919, Cheyenne became so famous that everybody would come out here to get an authentic Western experience in the Western location where the events took place, that you had people that started traveling from around the United States and visitors from around the world starting to come to CFD. And cowboys who competed here were known to be the world's champions, whether it was in saddle bronc, steer roping, steer wrestling, horse racing, didn't matter. That's how we started getting our reputation. In 1911, we had a whole series, and this was bolstered, I should say, our fame was bolstered by the visit of Teddy Roosevelt, which we'll learn about a little bit later, who came as President of the United States in 1910. And then the sky's the limit. The next year, several other organizations came to Cheyenne to see what they had seen and heard about. People came down from Pendleton, Calgary, up from Houston, up from Denver, up from various other places to see what Cheyenne Frontier Days was, because they wanted to do it in their communities as well. And so Cheyenne is known as the birthplace of the modern sport of rodeo, because these guys came with nothing, a blank slate. They used our rules that we had for our rodeo to create the rules for their rodeos. They used our format to create their formats. They used our cowboys to be competitors in their format. And so Cheyenne Frontier Days by 1919 easily got the name of the daddy of them all, because it's true. So the rules, the sideshow opening chute gates that were introduced here at Cheyenne in the 1920s, that all started here. So everything that you know about the modern sport of rodeo that you watch and witness today is seen basically what has come out of Cheyenne Frontier Days back then to become the modern sport of rodeo now. And so that is why we have many rodeos that are far larger than we are. Houston is astronomical. The National Finals Rodeo is bigger than Cheyenne Frontier Days. So we are not the biggest rodeo. We are the largest outdoor rodeo in the United States. Calgary gives us a run for our money as the largest rodeo in the world, and we don't give the most money. That's easily Houston or the National Finals Rodeo. But what we do have is that legacy. We have that heritage. And so Cheyenne Frontier Days is incredibly important, because if you wanted to have a buckle, if you wanted to have a trophy that shows that you are an exceptional cowboy or cowgirl, the place you want to win it is at Cheyenne. People look at this place, Cheyenne, because of its legacy, its heritage, and everything that happened here, with the same level of reverence and love and respect that tennis players have for this place called Wimbledon, or race car drivers have for a place called the Indianapolis 500, or golfers have for a place called St. Andrews. This is the place. And so that is the one thing that we continue to have here that's incredibly important, is that legacy, that heritage, and that prestige, which is something that can't be found anywhere else. All right, so that's probably what makes Cheyenne Frontier Days the most special place for rodeo that there is.